So, yeah. Hi, everyone. So nice to share this space with you, this digital space. Um, we're going to be having a dialogue for the next hour. I'm going to be a facilitator. I just wanted to give a little input for our conversation, a little structure. Um, we're not, our goal is not to arrive to any point. So we're just going to freely share and explore kind of the conversation today together. Let's be mindful of each other's space, how much we talk, and I just wanted to introduce a very simple concept. I'm sure you have experience with the talking stick. If we would be in a physical space together, it's a practice very common to kind of orchestrate a group conversation in. So taking that principle, if you feel you want to speak or if you feel you want to take the stage, let's say, just put your hand on the camera and grab the talking stick, so that way we can kind of figure out how we navigate with each other. We might be expecting some more people to join us, but so far it's us, and I'm really excited to get to know you a little bit better in the next hour. I'll do a short introduction of myself, and then ask you to introduce yourself, and then we'll go into the conversation. My name is Taina Moreno. I'm Dutch Brazilian, based in Berlin since almost 10 years. I'm a creative producer working in many different disciplines. I've always had a hard time kind of pinpointing what it is, what realm it is I work in, and I feel most comfortable with the term social practice. I've worked a lot with performance art, with audiovisual productions, and I used to have a project space in Berlin for a couple of years where we did a lot of experimentations around collaborative practices. Food was a very important vehicle there, and it was a very important tool for us to bring up several topics and expressions, and yeah, share a table through that. Currently, I'm working on an edutech platform for children based on decolonial storytelling. It's called Tales of Us. Um, so yeah, my practice has taken me in many different directions. But I'm very excited to know a little bit more about you. Maybe you can give a short introduction of who you are and what you're working on or involved with. So yeah, go ahead.
I guess I can take that one then. My name is Lindy Lodron Guevara, and I am from the US, but I live in Sweden currently. And I have for the last 7 years. I have been working with food and sustainability for many years. I've been managing a cafe at a youth culture center for about 6 years, where I implemented a lot of sustainability tools to that space and collaborated with a lot of young organizers and different projects. I just recently graduated as an international project leader in culture and arts here in Gothenburg. Thank you. So I've been working in film for the last year as well. So it's really something I'm very interested in. And I also have been working in food sustainability and design with the university here at Design School, HDK. So yeah, that's my background.
Okay, I can go on. So I'm Anita Vicenzi. I'm from Italy and I'm currently living in Bologna. And here I'm working for Kilowatt, which is an organization who regenerated the former greenhouses of the biggest urban park in the city, and which is active in different fields from sustainability, inclusion, and inside the place there is a lot of different things going on. There is outdoor education service for children, but also a vegetarian bistro, a place where we have like arts and movies, and also there is a creative agency, and I work for the consulting part, so I'm in project management, different project in fields of social innovation and sustainability mostly. And yeah, food is very important because of the bistro we have and because we want all the things we do to be contaminated with each other. So the practice is always to understand how to make all these different parts that are living in the same place communicating. And yeah, I'm really interested in trying to use the fact that we work on vegetables in a very like innovative way, but also to take these food fields and to contaminate all the other things we do inside this place. So basically, that's it.
So I'm Rebecca. I'm Brazilian Korean based in Milan. I have been here almost 4 years, and I came to study visual arts. So I'm a visual artist, and I work my research is on questions of identity, and basically like the main theme is like the identity always being in transit, so that is always changing. And yes, and one of the materials, let's say, I've used is food, because I was telling Taina before that in my family we haven't never like a roll or a dish that we eat every day. Like in Brazil, normally I remember my friends when I was a kid saying, I eat rice, beans, and like meat or chicken and salad, and that's it. And we never had a roll. And then being here in Italy, like living with my Italian boyfriend, the thing of the primo, secondo, the first, the second, and then you can't mix the things, and all of these things made me question. So related to food, let's say, it goes to that direction.
Nice, thank you. Nice to hear a little bit about you. The title of our conversation is "Food and Her Story: How Can You Speak with Your Mouth Full?" It's a title that sparked a lot of my curiosity. I think it can go in many different directions. I'm just going to make a suggestion, but I'm very happy to take it anywhere else. So let's just see how you feel about it. The topic, it's like, how can you speak with your mouth full? Made me think a lot about how we can speak about social issues, political issues, coming from a place of privilege, or coming from a place where that specific social issue doesn't affect us directly. How to speak about these things. And I think especially in the past year or two, the climate around speaking about these topics have been very interesting. Hi, David. Welcome.
Hello. Hi. Sorry.
Hi. Oh, good. Actually, maybe you can maybe I'll just pull you right into it. Maybe you can give a very short introduction on yourself, and then I'll get back to the topic of the conversation. Exactly. Grab the talking stick.
Okay. Yes. Well, I'm from Austria, but I'm living now in France in a really rural situation in the countryside where. So before I'm choreographer and a visual artist, and now working actually with a situation where I'm living here and trying to create or think about how to what to propose as an artist in this rural situation society. And I'm working now on a food cook food cycle where I visit different places in the countryside and try to get together the stories of people cooking and exchanging. So this is kind of a new project. But first, it was more. I was most of the time working with dance and and the combination of visual art in more or less the European capitals. But basically now it's really getting in contact within food and the practice of cooking and practice of handwork in general, and that's my occupation now. That's it.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, we were actually just opening the topic of the conversation. The title of our dialogue is Food and Her Story, How to Speak with Your Mouth Full. And I was just suggesting that what it made me think of a lot is how to speak on social issues coming from a place of privilege. So how do we speak about things that maybe don't relate to us necessarily directly, but of course we're part of? How can we speak from that point of view? And especially in the last year, I feel with a lot of social movements really coming to the foreground in like mass media and big movements happening in the streets. Black Lives Matter is a really strong example of that. I feel what I've heard a lot around me is some people being afraid of speaking out on certain topics because of cancel culture or because they didn't feel they had the right of speech. And it's I find it a very interesting dynamic between, of course, hundreds of years of oppression and of appropriation and of taking space away from people. And then, but how to still stay vocal and create strong allyship in these times. So this is something I've been thinking a lot about, and I'm curious to hear if this resonates with you as well, and if you have any experience with these topics in your practice, or yeah, I'd like to kind of take the conversation there, if you would be willing.
I think that's really interesting what you're saying, and also the title of this conversation can apply really well to this topic, because I was thinking, yeah, it's really hard to understand when to speak up on certain themes when you don't have the direct experience of what is like. I mean, you are talking from a point of privilege, and maybe in this talking with the mouth shut can be a good suggestion. So more be a facilitator of the dialogue, but it's important to prioritize, I think, the voices that have a direct experience of on these issues, because yeah, of course, I mean, we also need to collect more different voices, and as we're talking on a privileged side, maybe we can, yeah, keep the mouth shut and be the facilitator of this kind of dialogue, and also to be really open to listening and understand. And of course, at the same time, I think once we had heard a lot of voices, is also important to create our own opinion, and then to also to express it. But maybe at this point of the conversation, from our privileged point, we can, yeah, try to understand how to create a flow of voices, and to make sure that people that have had always had this privilege have the ear open, and they are like, yeah, they really listen, and they are aware of how important is to communicate without always open our mouth, and and start like saying how things should be, and and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think there's a really great example of an organization that meets through food and talks about our about colonialism, but then also does a lot of anti-racist work and a lot of social justice work. It's in Oakland, California. It's called the People's Kitchen Collective. And I think that through food is always a natural place for people to come together, sit together as equals, and hash shit out, right? You know, I think that food can really bring people together and create an equal playing field for folks, but also embodies colonialism, because we see a lot of foods that are heritage foods, things like that, that we think have been existing in spaces forever, but because of colonialism, ingredients have been brought through to Europe, to Asia, from the Americas. I know over the course of the last a few hundred years. So, you know, it's this food as a catalyst. It embodies a lot of where we've been, where we are, and where we can go. And I think it's a great medium.
Well, from my side, I'm thinking of when do we open our mouth? We open our mouth sometimes if we don't have breath, and when we want to eat, and then we want to exchange. We want to share. We need to share, and eating is also is like listening or tasting. So we have to. I feel in the situation where I'm here, that it's much about listening, giving the space to the other ones, to what they have to say, what could we say, and how can we be open for each other. And it's more the everyday, giving it on a kind of on a plateau, on a place to talk. That's the thing which is important, because it's often like closed in this situation where we are here around.
I was also thinking about the fact that, yes, what Lindy and also David said about the sharing, the food. It's like always a moment where this, where we kind of, it's not that we forget, but the things just go more fluid, related to colonialism issues. And I also think that food could be also a kind of language. I think that in some way, like food itself, the way you eat or the way you mix it, and it also can be, yes, it can be, it can tell a lot about like a culture, like yes.
On this, I think a controversial thing, so at least we have in Italy, is that, of course, food tells everything about cultures. I think is really, we can really understand people and culture through foods. But for example, as in Italy, food for us is all for us. I speak in generally, of course, and yeah, it's so. Also, Rebecca was pointed out that before is it is really traditional. It has a lot of rules in a way, and yeah, sometimes there is a clash when cultures collide on the issue of food, when other cultures try to contaminate Italian food, which I think would be super nice, super great and interesting. And actually in some places it happens, but sometimes when people try to like have different version of traditional Italian foods because that may suit better their culture. For example, there is this traditional Italian plate. This is called tortellini and is stuffed with meat, and they try to prepare the version with chicken, so also Muslim could eat it, and it was a big battle around this thing because you can change traditional cuisine, but you are not changing the tradition. You are just trying different version in order to make people together also on a plate, which at this point they can eat together, people with meat, people with chicken. So there is this very controversial thing that you can know a lot about culture through food, but it can also be a battlefield because it has a lot to do with tradition and with identity, you know?
That's okay. Yeah, I think it's like really interesting to like think about tradition, especially when it comes to colonialism, because a lot of, like I was mentioning before, like a lot of ingredients were from the Americas and brought over to Europe and to this part of the world, some centuries ago. But then it kind of shows how we can adapt and take in new ingredients and take in new things and be very flexible as humans. And I think when we talk about climate and the climate crisis that we're in, we need to become a little bit more flexible and localized. And I think we should be pushing the idea of tradition.
Yeah, specialized. In this globalized world we live in, and it's interesting. Like tradition, how much time will the tradition take place in? Like you're saying, I was just reading the publication from Arts of the Work class that we thought today has a special contribution in, and there's this text by Taina where he is talking about the potato and how it's such an important part of the German cuisine, like the Germans even refer to themselves jokingly as Kartoffel, and potato is from the Americas actually. So it's like the origin of tradition and the resistance to change it also is very interesting.
About these things, also recently I'm also an assistant in the school, and there were these students that they brought this research that was very interesting about this, and they select some ingredients that in Italy are considered really Italian, like that they use a lot in Italy recipes, but they came from totally another part. So, for instance, the red tomato, that actually the name is pomodoro, that it means pomodoro, that is like a gold, because before, I don't know if you see the paintings, they were all yellow, the tomatoes. And the red tomatoes, they come from, I think, Latin America, South America. So yes, and if you think about Italian food, that is like the first thing you may think, maybe pizza and pasta al sugo. You're like, it's really crazy how to think that ingredient before were not, like that recipe wouldn't be there, and then there is these questions of like how the tomato finished in Italy, and this is just one of the ingredients, but also chocolate, cacao, and so on.
Yeah, it's even chilies, imagine, chilies come from the Americas too. Imagine like Szechuan cooking without chilies,
Yeah.
The Swedish meatball came from Turkey, So it's like we have adapted and we can adapt. And I think it's really cool to kind of lift that veil a bit.
In a way, it's also like in France here, we say the viennoiserie avec with the croissant, which actually they think it comes from Austria, but it's more or less from Turkey rather, when the Turkish came. So it's like it shows all of this, the migration really of habits and of the product and the cultivation, and that's also so interesting how landscape is actually changing concerning this different habits of what we appreciate now as a food.
Yeah, also, and these things of contamination in food, it comes from a lot of years ago, and I really love the image of people on this big boat bringing these seeds and like disseminating the seeds in different lands, and that's poof, that's how we got there. So it's really funny when I meet people that the tomato, sorry, Rebecca was saying, in Italy is really common that people they don't even imagine that this kind of ingredient can come from another place, because now is so like, yeah, it's part of our cuisine, our lives, our daily life. And when you tell people, like tomato comes from Latin America, from America, and people are like, no, that's impossible. That's our plant. It's our vegetable. It's a symbol to our nation. And you're like, okay, but that symbol, it's original from another place. So I think that more awareness on this kind of things can actually be a key to make people understand how complex is our identity in the end, because if we think as food as identity, and so the question is, how can we aware people about these themes, and tell them stories about our mixed identities.
How can we do that? I find that triggered me in thinking again of the title of this conversation, because there's this food and her story, and her is in parentheses, and I was thinking a lot about how history is told from such a one-sided perspective, which is white male dominated. We learn about a narrative. I've been lucky to travel a lot through work, and from Congo to Brazil, like the school books are Eurocentric. They're teaching European perspective. Art studies in Brazil are. I think this is changing in the last few years, but it's very Eurocentric, all of it. So I think it's also about sharing. Different voices. We come back to the listening again, sharing different perspectives, that these stories become so evident, how interlaced we all are.
What I also enjoy is this, if we're listening and sharing recipes or the ways of cooking or ways of liking to eat, then you also come of sharing within the words and verbal, and in most of the time the people, or now it's starting to change it, but it's women who are cooking. So it's a culture also of more or less the giving a voice for those for the women of how they deal with their objects of food. And I think that's within talking about food, that's important.
I think a lot about modern cooking shows and cooking trends, and there is often like male chefs that are visiting, grandmothers cooking in the backyard, and there was like a Jamie Oliver thing where he visited a grandmother in Italy, and he's doing everything wrong, and you know, but he goes back into the UK and this is like a whole new thing, you know, and she's been doing it forever, but does she get any of the credit, you know? So it's also, it's listening, but I think it's also trying to see through stuff like that and who we give space to publicly and accolades to when it comes to things like that. I think it's really interesting in our history to see it.
Yeah, you know, it's controversial also this, that cooking has historically been associated to women, but now it has become a man word, like also in professional kitchen they are all men, and like the most of time the thing they say is it's because it's a hard work, and you're like, yeah, of course it's a hard work, but you know, women can do hard work too. So, and there, I mean, the controversial things I think is until is inside, like the home, inside home is for women, but when it become paid work is for men. So I can really get this part, and of course now more and more women are taking their place inside the like professional kitchen, but I think it's still an issue, the one of, yeah, of course, why it become hard work when is outside of the house, but inside of the house it's not. So
And also, I think that maybe this the figure of the chef is really related. Like maybe we can also compare like the chef and the artist that signature it, like the food, and it's like taking this thing and also what we were saying before, how I know Lindy talked about Jamie Oliver, but for instance, I don't know if because he's not Italian, but I see a lot of Italian chefs taking, like, mixing and doing like so many different things, and these things being acceptable by in general. And yes, and like most, like, now no woman came to my mind, like, from these study chefs. Of course I don't know many, but those that I see often are always men.
And sorry.
No, no.
The one-sided story often also really makes cultures go extinct. I was watching this TED talk yesterday on food and seeds and indigenous ways of preparing foods and how they are disappearing because there's this one-sided narrative of I don't remember which foods they were talking about in this specific TED talk, but where in India, for example, there's all these native fruits that are not being used or cooked anymore because all of a sudden it had to be, I'm just saying whatever, yeah, milk and potatoes and whatever was coming from this kind of Western or Eurocentric narrative of what is healthy. So kind of celebrating the same pattern over and over again makes us really go into this monoculture of what is a culinary expression, really, or what is a cultural expression. Interesting.
yeah, I think on this a really like interesting thing is the fact that we really we don't sometimes we don't get that, yeah, people that are migrating, for example, to Italy, they can lose their traditional plate because they can't find the raw material here. So also like trying to cultivate different vegetables or raw materials from different world, I think is a very important issues, because of course they're coming here, living in Italy, so of course they will like they will need to understand our culture, our raw materials and everything, but how can they preserve their tradition? This is kind like putting these people in a step below, because not only you're leaving your home country, but also when you come here, the risk is to lose some of your tradition. And also talking with some people, they told me, my children, that they they had never eat this traditional plate, which is like my favorite childhood plate, because my grandma used to cook it to me, because I can't find raw material, vegetables or other stuff that they are fundamental to cook it. So I think this is an important issue, how we can promote also the cultivation of different things that came from different places, and understand how they can influence our culture and our fields also.
And it's not only also how to get it, but it's like how to transform the origin material. Like if you make a flower, it's differently transformed. It's a different how to grain it. It's different from country to country, and it's so astonishing. Like now I'm in France, for example, in Austria we have the culture of Knödel. Knödel, it's like the dumplings, and they don't have it. They don't even have a word for it, you know. And it's astonishing. Like it's kind of close, and they don't. It's not. It doesn't come here. It didn't came here, and or the pain de seigle, the black bread of how you say. Well, it's not used. It's just that the use of the taste is different. The habit of tasting is different, huh? And that's really it is astonishing, I must say.
So I'll just take this moment of silence. I wanted to make a little offer to this conversation, and I was thinking of who I wanted to read from, and I decided to go for Audre Lorde. She has her book Sister Outsider. The whole book is very relevant for everything. So for whoever has not read Audre Lorde yet, please do. It's an excerpt from her text, The Transformation of Silence into Language in Action. It's a paper she wrote in 1977 for the Modern Language Association's Lesbian and Literature panel. So it's a small piece from this text. Here we go. Each of us is here now because in one way or another, we share commitment to language and to the power of language, and to the reclaiming of that language which has been made to work against us. In the transformation of silence into language and action, it is vitally necessary for each one of us to establish or examine her function in that transformation, and to recognize her role as vital within that transformation. Where the words of women are crying to be heard, we must each of us recognize our responsibility to seek those words out, to read them and share them and examine them in their pertinence to our lives. That we not hide behind the mockeries of separations that have been imposed upon us and which so often we accept as our own. For instance, I can't possibly teach Black women's writing. Their experience is so different from mine. Yet how many years have you spent teaching Plato and Shakespeare and Proust? Or another, she's a white woman. What could she possibly have to say to me? Or she's a lesbian. What would my husband say, or my chairman? Or again, this woman writes of her sons and I have no children. And all the other endless ways in which we rob ourselves from ourselves and each other. We can learn to work and speak when we are afraid, in the same way we have learned to work and speak when we are tired. For we have been socialized to respect fear more than our own needs for language and definition. And while we wait in silence for that final luxury of fearlessness, the weight of that silence will choke us. The fact that we are here and that I speak these words is an attempt to break that silence and bridge some of those differences between us. For it is not difference which immobilizes us, but silence. And there are so many silences to be broken. Beautiful text by Audre Lorde. So about, yeah, I don't know, maybe you can respond to it some way.
I think action towards inclusion and this time that we're living in now is so detrimental. It feels like we are in this shock moment of this pandemic where there can come to be really strong change out of it. This is kind of a moment, I think, in history that collectively we haven't experienced. And I think in terms of the climate crisis, especially, we see how detrimental biodiversity is, but we, in that, often forget the importance of human diversity and human voices and experiences. And yeah, I think that we are in the precipice of a moment, and it's going to be exciting to see what we do with this opportunity that we have.
I would like to react on actually the word of transformation and that we within food also we are always I enter the potato in my mouth and it's being transformed and I'm the potato and in a way to be open for the transformation, be open for the changements of that every day we now. It's getting warm, we change, it's like being open for that we are all the time in changement and the society, of course, and that we can drop our habits and get into new ones and stabilize new ones and change them again. But that we hear or listen again to this, the body in a changement. And in transformation, and food for me is like always like that's the place where we get in touch, where we enter, where I get the closest in a way to be the earth, but because often humans have this kind of wish of being part of earth, where we are thrown away, so within food we can really get into it, or breathing as well, but it's not so. You don't have so much material and you don't get it the same way.
Yeah, there's a really great mindfulness practice that you could do if you take like a little grape or something, or maybe a potato, and you put it in your mouth and you think about it as a seed and as it growing and all of the nourishment it needed to be grown into the plant, and then the hands and the sweat of the person that picked that plant, that fruit or that vegetable up, and then placing it on transport to another place, and then where it had to exchange to another place to then get to you, to where you purchased it, and then you bite it. And I think that's such a beautiful exercise because you can really feel the collectiveness around just that simple experience of you eating something. I think it's beautiful.
And while you were talking, and as we were talking about the pandemic situation, and you were talking and imaginedly eating with hands, I was thinking about how the sharing thing of food will change because of the pandemic, because I was talking with a friend of mine some days ago. He was having his child 8th birthday, and it was like, okay, but you know what it's like to organize a kid's birthday during the pandemic, because you have to have like everything has to be in a monoportion, because of course all the children, they can't touch the same food and the same packaging. And I was wondering how the sharing component of eating will change, because of course we can touch the same things, and also because sometimes we are scared about, you know, mixing our germs with other people's germs, which was of course a part of sharing food. And yeah, I hope food will not become only an individual experience, because the things of touching the other and to be so close to each other while eating was so important. So, and of course doing that with stranger, because of course with family and friends, you know, but do that with stranger was, every time I did that was a very bounding experience to that culture and that people. So I know I was just wondering how it will change, and hope it will change for the better, of course.
I think we're all looking forward to that post-pandemic dinner party, no? Big shared meal.
Or you can just come to Sweden, where there's never really been much of a
I find it interesting. I think that the pandemic, on a mass scale, of course, brought a lot of like realization of how much we were moving around in the world physically ourselves. But I wonder what it takes for people to realize, or for this to be more of a mainstream conversation of how much our food movement impacts the world. You know, that we don't have 50 avocados growing in our backyard, or I don't know, whatever. You know, I'm just talking about the avocado, but how we can go back to a little bit more of a consciousness of what we have around us in terms of ingredients also, and what kind of impact those have. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was a lot with what Anita and David was saying too about, you know, having bringing in more diverse vegetables and fruits from other parts of the world, and seeing if you can have growing practices in a localized level. I think it's so much more possible now to do that than in the past, because of technology and agriculture and everything. But also because of climate change, I think that it's sadly more available, especially here up north in Northern Europe. But yeah, definitely, I think that we need to adapt to include things to be grown and to be processed more locally. You know, if that's milling the flour to specific ways, as David was talking about, you know, with local mills. Here, you know, they're even growing quinoa here because it was such a problem with it being such a huge trend that it was really being a strain in Peru. You know, it was a huge strain on quinoa farms from, you know, a bunch of millions of Swedes buying so much quinoa. So, you know, I think that if there's more kind of vocal pressure on agricultural practices locally, there can be more change for sure.
And this mindfulness, I really like this exercise. I'm gonna try it out. Meditating on how much energy and how many processes go into that one grape or that one potato or whatever it is you're eating. It's beautiful.
It's also like if you make your own garden and you plant your plants, then I mean it takes a half of a year to have the cucumber or whatever, and so it's really you're dedicated. You have to go every day. You have to take away the whatever if something comes in. So it's like notion. If it's very close, if you are producing your food, then you realize also like wow, it's kind of special. Not it's. I mean, it's you gave the time that you saw the time growing as well. So it's important.
You see how much it takes, really.
Yes. How much effort it is also sometimes. You know, sometimes it's just not working. and yeah.
Regarding what Lindy was saying about food and climate change and like growing diverse vegetable and stuff, I think it's really interesting because of course climate is changing and agriculture has to change because it's raining less and less, so the soil will not produce the same vegetables anymore. So also contamination can be useful to understand which kind of vegetables are the vegetables of the future that can grow like for a more resilient agriculture, because it will change and we will change more and more. So it's stupid to keep stuck in trying to produce something that is not worth the effort because it's not growing because like planet Earth is changing because of us. And so let's try to understand which are the solution if you have like if the climate is changing also. We need to understand how to handle it, and like learning from other culture can be a good starting point, I think.
Yes, and climate changing and also logistic issues related to food, that we can't have a specific food where we are from maybe a totally other part of the world, also make us in some way like not to have the traditional food recipe that we used to have. And I also was thinking that maybe, like, I think the thing now that everything with globalization, everything happens really fast. And for us, it's, at least for me, it's kind of hard to deal with all of these transformations in such a short period of time, because these things in some way also happened, I don't know, some many years ago, but we didn't have airplane or internet, things that make everything be faster and faster. So I think people had before the time to get used to these transformations, and now it's kind of too much in the same time.
I just want to say that we have 5 more minutes. Let's just
I was thinking what you were saying, Rebecca, like the quickness of how can our taste change as well. If I'm thinking of the I'm trying out old recipes of the region here, and it's they create a different taste, and I'm not used to this taste. So within the changement of the transformation of our time, it's like also how quick are we willing to change or give a possibility of changing our tastes as well? You know, changing. Yeah, we're not used to it.
sorry, go ahead.
Now, I was just want to say that maybe the meaning of like speaking with the mouth full is the idea. Maybe could be just keep eating diverse things, and that will speak for us. Maybe it can be. I don't know, the importance of keeping eating diverse food and to eat it in silence and trying to do that mindful exercise Devin was suggesting, just to when we eat things, like try to focus on how deep that thing is, and how effectively like food really has important stories and journey that bring with it, and we can learn a lot about different things from that simple act of eating.
Yeah, I think, thank you. I mean, that this last 60 minutes went super fast. I'm surprised it's already an hour. I think my takeaway would be to be open for transformation always, open to look for new flavors of thought, new voices, and to meditate on the grape. I would say. Would any of you would like to say something before we close this dialogue?
Take care.
Yeah.
Yes, take care.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. That's really nice.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks.
I don't know how to close this. Bye.
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 Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Bye.